There is a new generation coming into the workplace. They have been for the last few years, and they are bringing a challenge to the world of work. One of the major challenges is just how we communicate in the office and how we are able to get information from one person to the other. Let me explain. You see, when my father started working, and I love to do this at conferences, by the way, I ask, who's the oldest person in the room? It's typically someone my father's age. And I say to them, when you started work on your first day in the office, how did you handle the emails that came in? Of course, there's laughter in the room. That generation didn't have emails. In fact, as I push the point and ask them, how did you deal with the telephone? Most of them point out that they didn't have telephones on their desks. That's true. If you're a young person watching this, you might not realize that back in the 60s and even the 70s in some companies, telephones were a privilege of management. And if you were just part of the general working pool, there was a telephone allocated to the secretary of your team. That generation had a very different way of communicating. They didn't have email, they didn't have faxes, they didn't have telephones. And if they wanted to get a message to somebody, they got up, walked across the office and actually spoke to them and gave it to them. At conferences, I ask that person I'm speaking to, but what happens if you had a sore leg or even a broken leg and weren't able to get up from your desk? Well, then, of course, they would write an inter-office memo. This brings great laughter as people remember those big brown envelopes that got pushed around the office, normally taking 2 or 3 days to get from one side of the corporate headquarters to the other. The point is that the older generations, those people who are now in their 50s and 60s, the managers, the senior executives in our offices, they prefer face-to-face communication. If they have something important to get across to their team, they prefer to meet their team face-to-face. Meetings, committees, in one room, all together. I want to see the whites of your eyes. It's not because they're not good at technology or don't like technology. It's just that at some deep level, they probably don't trust technology as much as they trust that face-to-face time. It's because of where they came from and where they have been in the corporate world. But now we go to the younger generation, this new generation of 20 and early 30-something young people, sometimes called Generation Y, sometimes the millennial generation. But they've come into your office, and let's think about them. If they want to get an important message to a group of their friends, how do they do it? Probably the most convenient for them is text message. And so they'll send a text message to their friends. And of course, all of us these days carry our phones with us. Some of you will remember the good old days when leaving home in the morning, there was a moment, that commute, whether in the car or on the bus or in the train, when nobody could contact you. These days, the only place you're safe from your telephone is in the tube or in the aeroplane. And those are about to change, probably unfortunately. So these young people will send a text message to each other. If they don't get a response from their mates in a few hours, they'll probably send an email. And if they don't get a reply to that email in a few hours, they might get worried. You know, if you don't get a response from someone by the end of the day, you're worried that they've disappeared. And so the worst case scenario for a young person is to go and meet face to face with somebody and try and track them down in real life. Now, this might not seem like a big issue as you just listen to this video. The story I've made is a little bit sort of generic. But I hope that you can see that there is a mindset shift that has taken place. That's really what I'm all about, helping people to understand the mindset shifts, the different expectations that different generations of people have in the workplace. It does make a difference. Older managers need to learn to trust technology and digital communication more. And younger people need to realize that sometimes face-to-face is best. In our offices, we need to learn to compromise between these two extreme positions, to work out that not every meeting is necessary, and not every email is necessary either. We need to be able to communicate more effectively across the generations. This is just one little insight, one little story that might help you to do a better job. I hope you can have conversations with your team about what is the best way for younger and older team members to communicate with each other.